Well, most doctors who work in actual hospitals and medical institutions have to show up to the office. We know that employees are more productive and more efficient when they are working in an in-office environment.
All right, let's talk about what just exploded on live television, because this may go down as one of the biggest media meltdowns of the year. Michael Strahan, the NFL legend turned Good Morning America golden boy, walked into that studio thinking he was about to score a political knockout. He had the confidence, the posture, and the dramatic setup. Everything was in place for a viral gotcha moment. Instead, he ran straight into Karoline Leavitt, Trump's razor-sharp press secretary, and the entire plan collapsed in real time. Strahan didn't just lose control of the interview, he got verbally stiff-armed, steamrolled, and sent sliding across the studio turf. Karoline didn't just survive the ambush, she dismantled it, reversed it, and made him look like he had wandered into the wrong league entirely. Calm, precise, and surgical. So how did Strahan's big moment turn into a public humiliation? Let's break it down.
We want to start with the administration's offer to buy with a mass buyout to federal employees out there. How many do you hope will take it? And by what percentage does the president want to downsize the federal workforce?
It started with what Strahan clearly thought was a trap. He brought up President Trump's proposal to reduce the federal workforce by offering buyouts to nearly 2 million government employees. In the legacy media world, that automatically gets framed as cruel, anti-worker, or authoritarian. Karoline didn't hesitate and didn't dodge, she walked straight into it. She explained plainly, this wasn't mass firings, it was voluntary, a generous offer, 8 months of paid leave for anyone who chose to step away. No one was forced out, no one was shoved aside. And then she dropped the real bomb. Only about 6% of federal workers in Washington actually show up to the office.
This is another promise made and kept by President Trump. He told the American people on the campaign trail that he was going to make our federal government more efficient and productive. And it is a fact that only 6% of the federal workforce here in Washington, D.C. actually shows up to the office.
Let that sink in. Taxpayers are paying for office buildings, utilities, security, maintenance, and the entire federal infrastructure while most workers stay home in pajamas, staring at Zoom screens, and somehow that's called public service. Karoline called it what it is, taxpayer-funded complacency. Meanwhile, America's real workforce, teachers, nurses, and police officers, shows up every day, with no remote option, no login button, and no excuses. So why should federal bureaucrats be treated differently?
Middle-class Americans, our teachers, our nurses, our law enforcement officers, who keep this economy working, show up to the office every single day, and President Trump expects that federal employees do the same.
He tried again, tossing out a hypothetical like it was his ace card. What about doctors, he asked. They worked from home, too. Karoline didn't miss a beat. Doctors can't examine patients through FaceTime, run labs from their kitchen tables, or practice medicine from the couch. That's not healthcare, that's fantasy.
Is there any concern that we risk losing people with years of experience like doctors and let's say scientists?
Her answers landed because they were rooted in reality. This wasn't about being harsh, it was about being honest. If taxpayers fund your salary, showing up isn't optional. Accountability in government, a radical concept, apparently.
Well, most doctors who work in actual hospitals and medical institutions have to show up to the office. We know that employees are more productive and more efficient when they are working in an in-office environment.
By now, Strahan was visibly off balance, so he pivoted to the notion of federal assistance programs. He suggested Trump was freezing aid to vulnerable communities, the classic play, imply cruelty and wait for outrage. He thought it would land. It didn't.
His order, as presented in that memo last night, directs federal agencies to come up with a return-to-work policy for their agencies. And if federal bureaucrats in this city don't like that, well, guess what? They can resign from their positions, and this administration is offering them 8 months of pay. They will be paid through September just to simply resign from their positions. If 5 to 10% of the federal workforce resigns, it will save taxpayers tens of billions of dollars. And so, look, we want people to return to work. We have beautiful federal office buildings here in Washington, D.C. that American taxpayers are paying for. They should be used. That's what the American people deserve.
Karoline shut it down instantly. There was no reckless slashing and no heartless cuts. It was a temporary pause, an audit, and a review of where billions of dollars were actually going and whether they were accomplishing anything at all.
Let's get to the funding part. The White House putting a freeze on federal assistance program. The federal judges put the freeze temporarily on hold, saying the government itself doesn't have the full scope of the programs that are going to be impacted. So what's your response to that?
She made it crystal clear. Social Security was safe, Medicare was safe, Medicaid was safe, and SNAP was safe. What was paused was waste, ideological nonsense, useless pet projects, and programs nobody asked for. That's what was being cut.
Well, as I addressed in my first press briefing yesterday, this is a temporary pause on federal assistance and grants so that the Office of Management and Budget here in the Executive Office of the President can review all federal assistance that is going out the door.
Then came the knockout punch. Karoline mentioned taxpayer money funding a study on shrimp running on tiny treadmills. Yes, real money, your money, for jogging shrimp. She said it plainly, we're not funding DEI workshops and Green New Deal leftovers anymore. That's not compassion, that's absurdity. At that point, Strahan was done.
And as I repeatedly stated yesterday, individual assistance, such as Medicare payments, Social Security benefits, welfare, food stamps, and Medicaid assistance will not be impacted by this federal pause. So the American people should not worry. If they're receiving individual assistance from the federal government, they will continue to receive them.
You could see it on his face, the forced smile, the tight nods, the polite panic. But he had one last card, the brief Medicaid portal glitch. He leaned in as if this were the smoking gun, chaos, failure, proof of incompetence.
So there will be no more federal funding for DEI programs. There will be no more federal funding for the Green New Deal, which is an order from the previous administration that President Trump has rescinded. It would make no sense for American taxpayers to pay for policies that this administration is no longer implementing.
Except it wasn't. Karoline calmly explained that it was fixed within minutes, no disruption, no service interruption, no crisis. In fact, the system worked better afterward. The only thing exposed was Strahan's lack of preparation.
Well, the Medicaid system was disrupted across the country yesterday. Online portals, they went down in response to this freeze action. So should that not have happened? And is that a sign of a chaotic rollout?
She explained how half-baked reporting creates unnecessary panic. Strahan just sat there, nodding like a student who didn't read the syllabus. It stopped being an interview and became a master class. Still, he tried one more swing, the Kennedy angle, citing Karoline Kennedy attacking RFK Jr., calling him dangerous and misinformed.
No, absolutely not. And I would like to address that. We were made aware of that immediately, and we amended the problem immediately. The Medicaid program is back up and running online.
Karoline didn't flinch, she dropped a mic. She laid out RFK Jr.'s decades of public health work, environmental advocacy, legal victories, and push for transparency. She reminded viewers, questioning institutions isn't dangerous, blind obedience is. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr., let's go to another topic. We have a lot to cover here. She then shifted to President Trump's nominee for Secretary of Health and Human Services, whose confirmation hearing was that morning, noting that his cousin, Karoline Kennedy, was speaking out against him, calling him unqualified, with dangerous and willfully misinformed views on vaccines.
And that he is a predator. And what's your response to that?
The internet noticed. Here's the real takeaway. The media hates figures like Karoline Leavitt not because she's wrong, but because she won't fold. She doesn't play along, crumble, or perform outrage theater. She shows up with facts, logic, clarity, and backbone, the four things corporate media struggles with most. They're used to conservatives who cave. Karoline doesn't cave.
I would reject those comments fiercely. RFK Jr. is widely respected. He's a great man who has dedicated his life to public service and to research. He is pro-science, and he is committed to making this country.
She flips the script. That's why Trump picked her, why the base trusts her, and why she keeps winning. Truth and confidence beat media theatrics every time. Strahan may be a legend on the field, but in political combat, Karoline Leavitt just sacked him for a massive loss. If you made it this far, hit like and subscribe, and drop your thoughts below. Was this the media smackdown of the year, or have you seen one that tops it? I'll be reading every comment.